Welcome everyone. We are sorry that you had to wait. We had a small technical problem, which is perhaps very common in these days. Now I think we can start. And my name is Marie Kraft. I'm the director of Circolo Scandinavo in Rome. And this event today, it takes place in the frame of a cultural project called La ZATTERA, in English, The Raft, which is organized by Stalker, now working here in Rome. And in the coming 2 years, Circolo Scandinavo will work together with Stalker in this context with different, in the different programs. And this project is financed by the city of Rome. So the Circolo Scandinavo was founded in 1860 as a Scandinavian association for artists and scientists. We have chosen to celebrate in these special times with these meetings, and we will organize a series of meetings during this spring. Many of them will be, or for the moment, they will be online, mostly online, and hopefully in the end, perhaps of the spring, also some of them could be in real life. So this, and each time we will register meetings and you can see them on the website afterwards also. So today's talk will focus on foreigners in Rome and foreign artists in Rome. We want to, open a small discussion on why foreign artists always have been interested and have come to Rome to work and live since many centuries, and also why is it still interesting to come to Rome and work and live. So the program will be several short presentations or openings for the discussion. We will start with Lorenzo Romito, who is a co-founder of Stalker, and he will remind us of how Rome has been a place for foreigners since its foundation. Then Fredrik Wickling, who is a historian and currently fellow at Villa Lante, the Finnish institute in Rome, not far from the Circolo Scandinavo. And he will tell us about some small things about the foreign academies in Rome. Julia Fiocca, who is also part of Stalker, will talk about the current projects of Stalker, where locals and foreigners meet around the artistic and artistic research and projects. You will also hear Ingo Arnason, who is the former director of the Circolo Scandinavo, and he will talk about 2 Nordic artists that has very important experience from their stay in Rome. In the end, we hope to have some time for some kind of discussion. So if you have something to say, some questions or comments, please write them in the chat and we will try to answer you. And now I will leave this screen to Lorenzo.
Hello, good evening. It is a pleasure to be here at the Circolo Scandinavo. I will try to propose a narrative of the importance of the foreigner in the making of the city, not only in the history of the city of Rome, but in the mythology and in the making of the city of Rome. Let's say Rome couldn't have existed without the presence of foreigners. And that's why I still believe, and I'm not the only one, that this tradition of exploring the city, that residences of artists and searchers in town that has a long history, it's so crucially important still nowadays for our city. Well, let's see who's the first foreigner. The first foreigner that was Rome wasn't even there when he arrived. The first foreigner is Saturnus. That's the Latin name. He was escaping Greece because he was kicked out from the Olympus from his son Jupiter, Jovis. And he was his father, and he was actually named in Greek Kronos, and he was the god of time. He arrives in Rome, which was not there. He arrives on the Palatine, actually, there where he gets hosted. Another crucial element, Rome has always been hosting, and probably it's the main, let's say, practice in this city is about hosting. So he was hosted by Janus. Janus was not a foreigner. Janus was a local, but himself, he had two faces. So he was the god of beginnings, he was the god of changes, of passages. And he gave hospitality on the next hill. Il Gianicolo and Il Palatino, they face each other across the river Tiber. So according with that, maybe the tradition, it's also that the old site there where Rome grows, the mythological name of the region, it's Latium, and this, according with certain etymological interpretation, comes from the hiding, which from latere, from the Latin latere, so from the hiding of Saturnus here. So here, Saturnus is also a refugee. And he's only the first refugees. And what Saturnus brings, it's bring the possibility of gathering the fragmented, dispersed people into a new community. And this is then when, mythologically, Saturnus gave birth to the Golden Age. Golden Age related with his attitude of being also god of agriculture. So gold, like wheat, it's gold in the moment he gets cut. And he's a symbol in Rome. It's actually the falce, the instrument to cut, to harvesting wheat, which is also the tool of his other aspect, with his Actonian aspect, an aspect related with the underground, and his underground divinity also, because an instrument that gets heralded by the death itself. So Saturnus hides, and the representation, there is this important representation of the city, esoteric representation here. We are there where Rome, it's that young woman sitting on top of the hill, and Saturnus is in the cave. So Saturnus itself starts to represent the Latium, the region, the wild region full of woods and waters, there where Rome sits. And this also has to do with the reciprocity that the city has with its own environmental context. And this is another crucial element of Saturnus, because he gets celebrated by the Romans in a holiday called Saturnalia. They used to take place in the days before Christmas, let's say. It's a solstitial celebration. And in the time of the Romans, all the rules, the position was upside down in those days. So gives also birth to our tradition of carnival, where we can change, we represent ourselves different from how we are. And it's a very subversive tradition that it's one of the ways through which Saturnus, in Latium, the wilderness, the extraneous, the otherness, is considered mythologically fundamental in the creation of the city. So Saturnus' last shepherd king, Saturnus Evandro, it was original from Arcadia, because the evidence of the relationship between Latium and Arcadian should be underlined. Well, he was coming from Arcadia, he was a foreigner, but he was sitting on the Palatine, on the ruins of this city built. That was the age of time, someone says Atlantis, that was there, the ruins that were there before Rome was built. And this was done to, and there he meets Aeneas. Aeneas is another foreigner. Aeneas is another foreigner, he's a refugee again, he's a king. And he's not a king, sorry, he's a prince of Troy that when he gets destroyed, escapes. And after a long travel that Virgilian narrates in the Aeneid, reaches Rome. So Aeneas asks Evandro's help. So we see how everything in this mythology has to do with this foreigners, refugees. And now we can go closer to the beginning of the city, than when Romulus wanted to create at the edge of very strong and powerful different Italic and Greek, Etruscan civilization, Rome as a center on this edge, on the edges of the river Tevere. Well, he proclaims the capital hill, the most important, also the only one not inhabited hill, one of the 7 hills of the city. He proclaimed it in a wood that was sitting there, the wood of asylum. He proclaimed it as the place that were to invite foreigners to come and give birth to the city. So then we can go, of course, how many emperors, how many popes through times has been foreigner, most of them. So let's say Rome probably, it's the need of someone that from abroad finds hospitality and refuge, and has the capability that Romans do not have to gather the people into a rebirth, a new edition, let's say, of the city through times. Maybe this is a beginning. Pardon? The artist. How we go nowadays. We reach nowadays. Why this is so important? No, I just don't want to use too much time. And so why this is the mythology, but then as I was saying, link the idea of the importance of otherness. The first importance of otherness, it's wilderness. So Latium, it's the wilder side of the city, and Saturnus is a foreigner, and the foreigner gathers in the ruins regained by wilderness, there where the city was. And also, as Saturnus teaches, this is the idea of eternality of the city, because the city, it's eternal, not because always splendid, but because knows how to hide himself into a wood that regenerates through the foreigners that arrive the city itself through time. So this is the reason why maybe Rome is eternal, or wants or declare itself eternal. And this tradition never stopped. So it became more and more important. Probably this is a secret, no, of eternal youth, that all the intellectuals of Europe, in the search of the origin, but then what a place to find origin, a place there, the origin don't exist, as we have been saying, because they always backwards to a previous ruins that tell us previous stories of origin, and probably a place that wants to be eternal doesn't want to have a hand. It's something that doesn't have a hand, doesn't have an origin. But the foreigner, and we can take Heracles, another Greek that came here in killing Caco, a monster here. Well, Heracles is exactly this symbol. So there is so many strata in this city of so many different stories that they become humus, fertility, no? And this is Saturnus, the god of fertility, a fertile place. But then the Romans that inhabit this, they're not capable to understand and read this. There is Michel Serres, he made a fantastic book on the foundation of the city. The city needs a foreigner with his naivety, if you want, with his ingenuity, to find himself, his narration, and through it, but this narration will always link to the different layers of the city, and we always be ready for a new narration to be designed by the foreigner. So let's say the foreigner nowadays, the artist, the searcher, it's as needed as it was, especially now that Roma, once again, needs to be refounded.
Hello. I am here to tell you a little bit about the first day when Henrik Ibsen came to Rome. The story is that the first thing he did the morning when he arrived in Rome was to go and meet the consulate, John Bravo, who took him straight to Circolo Scandinavo. They knocked on the door, and the director of Circolo at the time, Dietrichson, the librarian, answered very angry because he was sleeping, and he said, and on the door phone was the consul. I have a friend here who wants to see you, and he responded, but I am indecent. I am naked. And he said, does it matter? We are all men. And he got in, and he brought Henrik Ibsen straight into the library, who sat down and read some newspaper while Dietrichson got dressed. And there's a small passage here, I think that is from his, the way Dietrichson says this story that I'm going to read, first in Danish, and then we see, then I will tell you what happens in English. Det var en strålende solskins dag, at det beger seg i vei forbi Castel Sant'Angelo til den Sistinske kapell og Peterskirken, hvor der overvar gudstjenesten. Etter besøket i Vatikanet vandret jeg gjennom Forum Romanum, kriset over Tiberen til Trastevere og besteg Gianicolo. Og da kveldmørket senket seg over den evige stad, satte begge mennene følgelig et romersk vin i et hagosteri i Trastevere, rett på andre siden av Tiberen for Palazzo Farnese, og nøt livet, mens en dverg improviseret på mandolin. So if I try to translate it, there was a sunny day. They walked over to Castel Sant'Angelo, to the Sixtine Chapel and the Peter's Church, or St. Peter's, where they attended a mass. After visiting the Vatican, they strolled over through Forum Romano, crossed the Tiber to Trastevere, and visit Gianicolo. And while the evening night flowed over, they sat down with the Roman wine in a country osteria in Trastevere, just on the other side of Tiber, where the Palazzo Farnese is, and enjoyed life while a dwarf improvised on a mandolin. And we are now here at Circolo Scandinavo, on the other side of Tiber, just across the Palazzo Farnese. We are actually in the garden of Villa Farnese, 155 years later. Now, Ibsen was a young writer when he arrived. He had not broken through. He wasn't very famous, but he had a support to come and work as a writer. He says his side of the story, that when he visited the St. Peter's and saw the ceiling, he finally knew, what was it in English? Everything I wanted to say suddenly appeared to me in a strong and clear light. He had been writing a poem and he was stuck. So he went home. This was a 50-page poem. So he returned home and he rewrote the whole poem as a theater play that is called Brand. A theater play that was to be written, not performed. And because of his experience of visiting St. Peter, now there are two stories. If it was the ceiling, the dome of St. Peter's Church that impressed him so much, or if it was the Sistine Chapel. I believe it was the Sistine Chapel. It is easier to see how a poem becomes a theater play while you are standing under the Sistine Chapel. It also might have been easier to visit the Sistine Chapel from the St. Peter Church at that time, and definitely if you were in the presence of the consul John Bravo, who was an important person in Rome. And Ibsen wrote, the year after he wrote Brand, he wrote Peer Gynt. So for me, I find it very romantic to think that we would have a very different Ibsen if he wouldn't have come to Rome and visit the Sistine Chapel and St. Peter Church. Thank you. I would like now to present Fredrik Wittling. He will take the screen. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for having me back. It's so nice to be part of this. It's also, I guess, part of this ongoing celebration of the anniversary of the Circolo Scandinavo. Very hard to follow these introductory acts, but I'll try to pick up on this mythology, Fred. This is perhaps one of the biggest topics one could ever approach, and certainly in 10 minutes. So we'll see what happens. But we heard before about mythology and various hills and divinities meditating over Rome and its beginnings, and maybe it would be nice then to connect to the whole idea of foreigners. And basically, I think this contribution will be a little bit about etymology, and it's worth, I think, meditating a little bit on the word foreigner, and especially in Italian, straniero, and perhaps also the word forastiero, which is interesting. The sort of the outsider, if you like, is. Rome is, of course, the capital of Italy, but that's only very recently in its history. And essentially, anyone who came to this city was a foreigner, an outsider, let's say. And this has always been the case. Some came from further afield, like across the Alps, for this particular Circolo, for example. But when you were talking, I came to think of an image that we picked up in a book that I was doing on the history of Stazione Termini, which is the poet laureate Petrarca, when he was in Rome in the middle of the 14th century, sitting on the baths of Diocletian, meditating on the ruins of Rome, and basically coming up with the modern idea of history. So maybe that's a nice image of another, as it were, forastiero or straniero, sitting on another high space in Rome and connecting to its past. There's much to be said about this, but using this link of Rome as a focal point, Rome as symbol, Rome as the city of Rome, but also as Rome as the empire, and all of these historical expectations that people have had coming here to study it, to get inspired by it, I think can be summed up quite nicely in the scope of this Circolo. Artists, yes, but also the scienziati, the scientists, which is essentially the topic that I myself have been dealing with in a book that I've done, for example, on the history of foreign schools, of these foreign institutions in Rome, which is a 19th century phenomenon, essentially. And there is a nice link, I think, to Petrarca, to the medieval period, and to the etymology of institutions. Because essentially what we have is, we have 19th century scholarly institutions, but we have a tradition of coming to Rome, which is much older, of course, and essentially a tradition of religious pilgrimage, medieval religious colleges, and also national organization of these colleges. And I think it's important to remember that when you think of this, for example, this Scandinavian association here, which is old, but it was predated by centuries by these medieval foundations. Essentially, people made it to Rome if they made it to Rome. It was a long trip. They would have to go somewhere. They might not be loaded with money, so they might end up staying in one of these national colleges, and have guides who would take them around the city and make sure they went to the right places. Yeah, I was warning that this would, it's a big topic. Jumping ahead a bit, connecting to my little vague theme here of etymology, I wrote a book which I called The History of Foreign Schools, and immediately with the word school, you encounter a problem. What is that? What does it mean? Implying a whole general framework of ideas and traditions. We also, as we all know, we have academies in Rome, we have institutes in Rome, we have all sorts of things in Rome. We also have an association such as this Scandinavian one. This is worth keeping in mind, I think. These foreign institutions, at least in the sense that I've been studying them, the foreign schools, exist primarily in Rome and in Athens and elsewhere around the Mediterranean for the study of archaeology, art, history, and philology, if you like, classical stuff, basically, classical studies. And this whole classical thing is part of the whole framework here, I think, is what we have is, of course, Rome being attractive to artists, but being attractive in general for what Petrarca and others were responsible for, this idea of history and Rome being so important as a symbol, as a focal point of everyone for a very long time. And obviously, Rome as a center of the arts, Rome as a center of antiquarianism is a vast topic. But basically in tandem with the professionalization of science in the 19th century, you get a need for a similar organization as in the medieval period, but in a modern sense, of having national institutions where these people can come to stay and organize themselves when they're in the city to start to study the past, hence these foreign schools. This is a vast topic, as I say, with the one exception to the 19th century phenomenon. The obvious exception is the Académie de France from the 17th century, 1666 to be precise, which predated various other, it linked to this medieval tradition that I talked about, but it predated other foreign similar institutions by several centuries in itself, which is a very important place. Obviously a place for artists primarily. What you get eventually then in the 19th century are these institutions that focus more on archaeology. One of the first ones was interestingly, or the first one in Rome was interestingly an international venture, the Istituto di Corrispondenza Archeologica, which is important to mention, which, to make a very long story extremely short, became the German Archaeological Institute eventually. And this is linked to the political development of during the 19th century. all of this happened, however. The Istituto di Corrispondenza was set up in the Papal States. It was set up in 1829 in Rome, in Papal Rome. After Rome became the capital of Italy, these institutions, these national institutions, began popping up like mushrooms, starting with the transformation of this German institution, which is of course linked to the existence of Germany, followed by many others, as one could talk about at another point. So all of this is essentially about the organization of science and organization of classical studies, and which includes art history. But also anyone who travels, at least before anything modern, requires some sort of logistics and organization. And I think it's important to see, maybe not to see these institutions as hotels as such, but as a framework in which you can facilitate your brief period in Rome or long, and connect as quickly as possible to the network in the city, but also to your fellow compatriots and so on. And that, in that sense, the Scandinavian Association is a rather lovely exception to this national rule. This is a theme which we might return to at some other point. But there is a tension, an interesting, from the very beginning, people are attracted to Rome for the same reason, regardless of where they come from, essentially. Rome is important because it's important, as it were. And of course, it also goes in and out of fashion. Rome was the center of the arts in a totally different way in the 19th century than it is today. That's no question about that. And that also reflects the development of the art scene, as it were. But this national organization is perhaps not always ideal. And that is, this prestige element is also present in all of this. As prestigious as it was, as necessary for your formation as it was to come to Rome, it was also necessary for various countries to have their own institutions to rival those of the others, basically. With that, I'll pass the ball back to Ingo.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, the second artist I want to present is for me very, very, how do you say, dear. There's a bit of a myth around her here in Rome. Her name is Roska. Of course, the artists are so many and the stories are infinite. So I choose two of the artists that are kind of dear to me. And Roska is because we have an artist in residence here who is working on a project related to Roska. She is Icelandic, and she was living here in Rome in the 60s and the 70s, or was active working and living in Rome in the 60s and the 70s. Moved back home to Iceland in 1994, which was when I came to Italy. Roska was born 1940 and she passed away 1996. I have here a book which was published for one of her exhibitions, edited by Hjalmar Sveinsson. And I want to read just a little bit passage about Roska and then show you some of her drawings. Roska belonged to the generation of radical European artists who wished to expunge the boundaries between life and art, who fought against the artistic snobbery of the bourgeoisie, the political complacency of the masses, and the propaganda machinery of professional politicians. Roska was a painter, a photographer, a film director, and above all, an insurrectionist. The theme of her life is continual rebellion in living poetry and politics, as she herself said in 1978 article about surrealism. She lived in Rome for the majority of her life, but to Icelanders, her life was cloaked in the robes of adventure, even legend, because of her personal charms, artistic talent, political radicalism, and aura of things southern. Nonetheless, her life evolved into tragedy due to the burden of chronic illness and her eventual downward spiral into the world of drugs. Her first private exhibition was in Reykjavik in 1967, and the exhibition was advertised as an artistic introduction by SUM, a group of young avant-garde artists who would later have great impact on Icelandic art. Róska was invited to join the group and at that time participate in an outdoor exhibition where she set up a washing machine transformed into a rocket launching pad. This was literally the first feminist work of art in Iceland, and it elicited such enthusiasm, according to her friend, the poet Baldur Óskarsson, that it was stolen a few days after the opening of the exhibition. Róska studied in the Accademia di Belle Arti here at Rome, and then later in the Italian Film School, Centro Sperimentale. If I show you here some of her work, here this is working. Here we have her picture. And some of her drawings here. I would highly recommend if you would Google her or inform me more about her. And of course, we would very much like to participate with our artists in residence in the project about Róska, because she was a very strong activist, definitely ahead of her time. And maybe we'll end up writing here a small poetry from her diary. I am tired of waiting in the dreary gray concrete. When I wake up this morning, I try to console myself with the words of feminist activist, "Woman is beautiful." But I was immediately put off course by Baudelaire's observation, "Beauty is always peculiar." So I decided to take a shower. Of course, the artists are so many and the stories are infinite of this over 160 years history of Circolo. These were only two artists of the many. Hopefully we can do more of this. Thank you all, and I would like to present to the screen. Sorry, Julia. Thank you.
Thank you, Ingo, and good afternoon to everybody. So at this point, my role is to bring you to the ground, after mythology, after narration of tradition and memory, to invite you physically and virtually to join us into this raft. As Marie Kraft mentioned at the very beginning, the raft, la zattera in Italian, is this artistic device that we as Stalker we propose in the frame of this project of the Municipality of Rome, the Department of Culture, for 3 years, to collect, to reactivate, to explore all the memories of the invisible and the rejected and the forgotten memories of the people, of a lot of people, especially migrants, that in 150 years in which Rome is the capital of Italy, they arrive in Rome as migrants at the very beginning, and they transform. They're very important for the transformation and development of the city of Rome from the really bottom up, with a lot of social, political conflict, but quite important. And Rome is just a little bit younger than Circolo Scandinavo. We are 150 years this year, so we can, in a way, to enjoy together this moment. So for us, going back to the practice of Stalker, is really to be on ground, to see, to actualize all the memory and the story of the city from just following an invisible sometimes, or a little tracks, or a little red lines that we can find by chance sometimes, and to do that together, collectively, to, in a way, to create a condition to be together in between inhabitants, in between foreign, in between young or not so young people with the migrants' experience, but really all the inhabitants that share and have the urge today to discover and to inhabit a space that we cross every day. So the idea, and what we want to invite you, is really to cross with us these times of 150 years, but also the space. So it's in between time and space, but in between also institution and informality. This all invisible world that we have every day, this underground need. So we are really on the lines, on the edge of the informality and institution and surface and underground. And so this is quite important, to be in between visibility and visible and invisible, and also to have to take the risk to reveal this invisible world, invisible condition, but sometimes also to maintain an invisibility of this. So there is also a social and political aspect or condition on this. So our position is quite important, and to do that we invite the people to be part of this kind of situation, to create a tension among us. So when we propose this that we call circumstance, that they are not walks, they are not guide visit, they are not performance, they are not a theater event, but we call this circumstance. So the idea of being together for a time and a temporary moment, to cross a territory, and to try to create a tension, a moment to be together, to look at what there was behind, sometimes with the testimony of that moment and this action, and to invent a new way of act this space, which are sometimes abandoned space, neglected space, or just leftover space. But for us are at the moment the more interesting space to reinvent, to recreate a condition to live in our city. So the gaze of the migrants, or the gaze of temporary inhabitants of the city of Rome, are quite important to be together with the people who really knows very well the place we cross. And also the construction, the building of a narration of this act and this territory are quite important. There also a responsibility in how to narrate these stories, and also the action that we are going to do together. For example, tomorrow, we are virtually, but tomorrow we invite you to cross together the countryside of Rome. The countryside, just to say, because we were next to the downtown, like 5 kilometers from downtown, but in a different landscape, completely kind of countryside inside the city. And we will cross the soil and also the underground to be and to see who lives in these places and who used to live there. There is a long story about that. So I don't want to say more about the situation of tomorrow, but it's really the idea is to explore and to be together in this moment and live the situation and thinking together how to act at the moment, to be responsible for this, to be part of this landscape, and also to create a narration of it. So yes, in 3 years, all this action that we are going to discover together and to act together will be part of the raft. So the raft is the idea of having this mobile archive in 3 years that will cross the city of Rome and bringing around the story of the city, of this invisible story that they are not they are unknown also for the people who live in Rome. And sometimes the foreign, they know better than us. So it's really important, this position of the foreign, the temporary foreign, and also the foreign that decide to live here in Rome. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Lorenzo, Giulia, Frederick, and Ingo. For me, this is always extremely interesting, of course, and I hope that you also found it so. And now I think we have some minutes. So if someone wants to comment or ask questions, of course we know, like we have said before, that this was a very short introductions to something, and we will continue the talks. And I mean, the ZATTERA, the RAT will continue, and this will be, I mean, we will have the many more moments to talk more perhaps deeply on this, on these questions and about these artists and these situations. But please, if someone wants to ask something or comment something, you can write in the chat. And otherwise, perhaps I will ask something. Let me see. Or perhaps if you have any questions. Lorenzo, yeah. Yes, I think we use this system, so it's easier to know who's speaking.
Yes, well, going back on the discussions that have been brought on, why sometimes we, especially with art, we say now how central, Frederick was saying, how central Rome has been in time and in different times. I think there's a specificity of this city, as I was trying to say, is that the time frame is so wide of this city, and the variety of researchers. So it's not a city. Michel Serres called it a black box. So it's the only city, let's say Athens or Jerusalem. They produce knowledge for others. They express themselves. This city does not express itself. This city is a black box in the sense that feeds, no, like Saturnus, feeds everything, feeds its sons, and this process become fertile for the other, fertile for the foreigners. I try to explain this better. I think this attempt of creating a city that never dies, eternal, it has something to do with the non-linear functions or the theory of complexity nowadays. So how to invert the verse, the linear verse of time, the linear process of growth and death, into something that hides in the ground like Saturnus and can lead back time to another beginning. And this possibility to start up a new narration, to interpret the elements of the city into something that proposes a new way of looking cities. I mean, we have the first Rome, the second Rome, we had a Rome before, and someone even thought we had a third Rome. I still think we didn't achieve the third urban model for the planet, but I think this is the importance of Rome. So you never get tired. There is not a form of this city, and whoever comes here gives form to the city by the process of exploring it. I think this is why we really need foreigners as a city, and this is also why foreigners really need to come here.
Why foreigner has to come here? Yeah, we have a long tradition together with the foreign, especially from the Cultural Institute in Rome and the academic in Rome. So we are really, every year, we are a kind of stalker, is kind of a ghost guide of the artist and the researcher who decide to spend a year in the city of Rome, coming from outside and being in this fantastic place hosted in the academy. And so some of them really wants to be guided without being guided in this other side of the city. So we are every year very happy to try to have this exchange, which are very important to us, for us, because to see our city, our everyday context, looked at by other people who are temporary here, coming from a completely different culture, a completely different approach and practice, is quite important. It's really a reciprocal learning. Looking at our territory, which are quite active and needs every time to be reactivated and to be reanimate. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, this is an interesting performance. I'll just add add something to which is possibly relevant. I think I think Rome should also be praised for basically putting up with all these foreigners and essentially this image of Rome as the eternal city, timeless, is impossible. It's an impossible act to. You can't live up to that. There is no place that can be this, and I think Rome does express itself. I think it does so all the time, but it's a matter of how you. One secret, I think, to all this foreign interest is nostalgia. Rome was, and this comes out if you read people like Ibsen, I dare say, or anyone today. Rome was always better before. Rome is never at its best right now, it seems, to these people. It was always in the past, or possibly in the future, as with Mussolini and these people. So this weird, timeless, it's, yeah, you almost get a sort of historical vertigo when you think about Rome. It's too much, it's too big, it's too vast, but surely it can also be right here and right now and a physical, real place. So the nostalgia and the city of ruins and, well, that was what Petrarca was on about. It was the ruins that inspired him. He was looking down on these traces of the timeless, eternal past, etc. It's interesting. It would be a nice discussion to continue. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, I think we have had about an hour now, and that's what we were given, more or less by ourselves and also for technical reasons. So I would like just to say that, of course, for us at the Circolo, to have this, to be part of these projects with Stalker and other local artists and institutions, it's extremely important. I think it's in this this small community of Scandinavians, or these different academies or institutions who has these small communities of foreigners, and to be part of that, and at the same time be able to go out and explore together with people living in the city in different ways for a longer time, it's very exciting. And as we saw, through Roska, who lived here, I think, many years, Ibsen less, but this meeting with the city, but also with people here, and the context, I mean, the local context can be very inspiring for many artists, and not only to come to Rome to be, away from something, and yes, of course, that's also something important sometimes in an artist's life, that he needs calm and a distance. But I think this position of being distant and close at the same time is very rich and useful still today. I think also in these times with the pandemic, we also have very many big issues about our Earth in general, the climate change, and our with the sustainable goals that we all of us must of course address today. I think Rome is perhaps again or now can become and is a very fertile territory to learn and to perhaps, yes, to change a little bit our way of living. It's very vast. It's a very big territory with a lot of green areas in the city, and this is not, perhaps sometimes when you pass Rome very quickly and you don't really realize this enormous space that Rome is, and also these old almost woods and natural and wild areas in the middle of the city sometimes. That's exactly what we in many big cities today wants to recreate, and in Rome it's here. So I think we have also a lot to think about how we can look at Rome as this perhaps sometimes a little bit slow in the changes. It has changes many times, but it's not the quick changes. It's not the quick transformations, but perhaps today for us that can be that can help us to understand how other cities also and in other parts of the world how we could create another living environment. So I think the foreigners and this wilderness, as Stalker is working on several projects now on these themes and also others, I think it's can be a very good introduction to something new for Nordic artists and other foreigners. And if you are interested, of course, you can contact us, because these projects will also invite people, to invite artists to participate in different ways during the coming 2 years now, I think, until the end of 2022. But you will hear more about this on our website and in other talks and meetings, and I hope also that you will, yes, if you are not in Rome now, that you will be able to come here and stay for a while. And now with the travel restrictions, it's good to stay for a while, not to visit places too quickly. So if there are no questions, I think we will end here, and hope to see you soon again. Thank you for tonight. Thank you, everyone.